Welcome back to the second day of training on SQL for data analysts and data scientists. I hope you're all doing well. Before we proceed or begin with today's discussion, let's do a quick recap on what was discussed yesterday in the previous session. So we tried to understand that data can be segregated into three types: structured data, unstructured data, and semi-structured data. Structured data is where we can organize the data properly into rows and columns, and data in each column will be of a specific type, right? Like organizing files in a file cabinet in an organization. You wouldn't put all files randomly wherever you want, right? You will put the documents under the folders that they belong to. So every column will have data of a specific type, and it is neatly structured. Unstructured data would be data that is in the form of documents, graph databases, videos, audio clippings, images, all that become unstructured data. And semi-structured data is where we have a combination of both. Like yesterday, I was giving the example of Wikipedia, where we have unstructured data, like paragraphs of data, we had images, audio files, and there was also structured data where in certain portions on the Wikipedia page, data was organized into text tables. It was arranged into tables, into columns and rows with a specific format. And the data in those columns was of specific type, say numeric, etc. So that is how the data is segregated into three types. Then there is something called as data type. The type of data that can be stored under each column in a structured database. So if you have marked the data type of a column to be integer, a whole number, it means in that column, into that column, we are supposed to enter only integer values. We will not be allowed to enter alphabets or decimal values or dates or timestamp. If we have marked something as date, then we can put dates into it. We can't put timestamp into it. If you have marked something as Boolean, it takes only two values, true or false. So we are going to define the type of data that we will be putting into a column by assigning data types to those fields. And when data is organized into rows and columns, yesterday there was some nomenclature. When data is organized into rows and columns, the columns are referred to as fields or attributes or columns simply. And the data that we enter into the column, the horizontal part, the horizontal rows, they are called as rows or records or tuples. So when you arrange your data into columns and rows, inside this is called as a table, which is also called as an entity. And when there are many such tables holding data, all of these tables are stored in a container, which is called as the database. All of these are stored in a container, which is nothing but our database. And to access the data that is stored in these tables, in that database, to be able to retrieve the data or to be able to insert records, to be able to create new tables in here, we need a language through which we can communicate with these databases. So SQL is one such language which is specifically used to communicate with relational databases. Okay. Examples of relational databases being Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server, so on and so forth. And as a part of this training, we will be doing all the hands-on activities on the PostgreSQL database. Then we had talked about what is SQL, the one that I was discussing now. It is structured query language used to communicate with the data in the databases. Which databases? Structured databases where the data is stored in RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, which means there will be relations between the tables. Okay, how do we define relationships between the tables? That we will see tomorrow in the next class, where we talk about primary key, foreign key, constraints, and thereby using these keys, how do we relate the tables? Yesterday, we had also looked at how to install PostgreSQL on our respective machines. Okay, so you can refer to that video and install it. The agenda for today is, now that we have installed PostgreSQL, we are going to create one database in it, and we are going to create tables. After creating tables, we will learn how to insert data into the tables. I'll show you both single insert, where we insert record by record, and bulk insert, where we can insert a lot of data in one go. We will also talk about the not null constraint and the default value that can be set up. So this is the agenda for today's session, today's discussion. Before we begin with the discussion, I would request you to kindly subscribe to the channel if you have not already done that. It would be of great support if you do it. So thank you so much. Let's start with today's discussion by opening the PG admin tool. So after you have installed the tool, you need to open the tool like this. You can just click on this PG admin. Search for PG admin, and you will, once you click on it, it will open up. So this is a server. It is a server where we will keep all of our data now. We are going to create databases on this server, and we are going to insert data into it. Every time you open it, you will be prompted to sign in your password. So you can enter the password. And now I'm in. If at all there was any error, it would have prompted. The password has been accepted, and here are the servers. You will have PostgreSQL 15 on your machines, whoever has installed it yesterday. I had an older version also, and now the newer version. But these are not yet active. We are not yet connected to them. You can see a cross mark. When you click on that, it will expand and it will get activated. You can see the message server connected. It popped up and went away. So under this server, there is a database which will be present by default. It is called Postgres. I'm going to create a new database. So how do we do it? One way of doing it is we could simply select the query tool. Okay, when I click on this query tool icon, it's going to open up the query editor, this area, wherein we can issue a create command. What is it that we are trying to create? A database. Followed by that, we need to give the name of the database. So let's say I will call it 360DigiTMG. How do we run this command? How do we execute the command? We need to select the command and then click on this execute button, and it will be created. Okay, so I will just give a different name. Maybe here it's not accepting. Okay, so the query is successful and I have a database with this name created. How do I know that it was successful? First, just we can see the message. The next thing is when we go to databases, right click on it and refresh it on this Explorer side. You can see the number of databases now is 2, and we have the new databases. The database, the new one that I created. Okay. Now, what if I might want to delete the database? We understood that we can create it using the create command. How do we delete a database? Drop database. And the name. Okay. Now I need to run only this command. So I've selected that command and I'll click this. The database will be dropped and it will be removed. Another easy way of doing it. Okay, I have a session running, so it's not allowing me. Anyway, another way of doing it is we could just go there, right click on it and select the option to delete or drop. Are you sure you want to drop the database? Yes. Okay, so it will get dropped. Like we can drop the database either by entering the command or by doing a right click here. Similarly, we can create a database either by giving the command to create the database, or in a more interactive way, you could just right click on the database option on the Explorer side and select the option to create database. Without typing in the command, by interacting with the user interface, we can create a database. Give it some name. I'll just call it training and click on save. So a new database with the name training is created and it is also displayed over here. Now let's say I would like to go into this training database, and here I would like to create some tables. So how do I switch the database? Right now I'm connected to Postgres with the username Postgres on the server PostgreSQL 15. Database name, username, server name. Yesterday we had discussed. So how do I switch to training database now? All I need to do is select that database and then click on the query tool. So when I click on the query tool, after having selected the database, it's going to open the query editor where you can see a change in the name of the database. So now I'm connected to the training database as the super user Postgres, and the server that I'm working upon is PostgreSQL 15. This is how you go into a particular database. Now in here, I would like to create a table. The command to create a table is create table followed by that the table name. And then we need to provide the list of fields that we will have in that table. If you don't provide the list of fields, it will not allow us to create a table like we did yesterday. I think I had given this demonstration yesterday. It threw an error because the column list was not provided. I'm going to provide the list of columns here. I have the query ready. I'm just going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to create a table with the name employee, and my employee table is going to have first name. And remember, we don't just give the name of the column and leave it there. We need to define the type of data that we are going to store in that column. So in my first name column, I'm going to allow text values, varchar of 20. At most, I can enter the name of 20 characters. So when you define the size here, you can't go beyond that. Okay. Middle name, mid name, and the employee might have last name. Age of the employee, which I'm taking as integer, and salary also I'm taking it as integer. The location where this employee belongs is also going to be entered here as varchar. So this is the structure of my table. It has certain columns, and what is the type of data that will be allowed inside those columns is also mentioned. Now when I run the query, it's going to create the table for me. How do I know whether this was successful or not? I will simply go to schemas. Okay, go to schemas, and under the schema, we will be able to find tables. So it seems like, if at all, sometimes you may feel that it's not created. If at all it does not show the name of the table, you can right click and refresh it. Here, even before refreshing, without refreshing, it automatically reflected it. It's showing me that I created a table with the name employee, and we can see the list of columns that are present under the employee table. Do we have any data in this table? How to check whether or not there is data? We need to query the data. We need to query the data, and the statement that is used, or the command that is used to query for the data that is present in the database in order to access that information is the select command, select query. This comes under DQL. This is also called as DQL, data query language command. So DQL command. We will be talking about DDL, DML, DQL, DCL as a part of this training. Okay. So this is a DQL command. Select. What is it that I would want to select? Select has a minimum of 2 things that we should give. What do you want to select? And from where do you want to select? Okay, I want to select something, but from where? What and from where? So I would like to select all the columns that are present in this table. So if you want all the columns, rather than mentioning the names of each and every column, we could just give star. Star is equivalent to query data present under all the columns in the table, everything. From where? From employee. We fire a select query on table. So you don't have to explicitly say that this is table employee. It understands that you're trying to fetch the data from the table employee, and we are fetching all the columns from the table employee. Okay. So selecting what? All the columns indicated with the star. From where? From the table employee. And when I run this, you can see the output. So first name is one column and the data type is varchar, character varying, 20 characters are being allowed. There's another column, mid name, last name, age, which is an integer, salary, which is an integer, and location. However, there are no rows. There is no data in here because we didn't insert any data. So I'm going to go ahead and insert some data now. By using the create command, what did we achieve? We created a table. We defined a table. So create comes under DDL. It stands for, it is under the bucket of DDL commands. They define the structure of the table. DDL, it stands for data definition language. Okay, data definition language, DDL. DQL stands for data query language. This is the only command that is there under DQL, data query language, is the select command, which will allow us to select or the data, which will allow you to query for the data present in the table. DDL has a lot of commands. Today we are looking at create. So we are creating the structure, we are creating or defining the table itself. Once the table is defined, once the structure is ready, how to insert data into this? To insert the data means we are talking about putting records. Okay, so we use an insert command. Insert comes under DML. DML stands for data manipulation language. It is used to manipulate the data that is present inside the table. DDL will define the structures of the table. DML will work with the data inside the table, like inserting the records, making some modification to the records, deleting a record that is not necessary. Here we're trying to insert. So the command that is supposed to be used is insert. Where? Where should we insert? Insert into. Insert where? Insert into something, right? You select from the table. When we are selecting from the table. While inserting, we are inserting into the table. Insert into, followed by that, the table name. And what is it that I'm trying to insert? Data. We can directly provide the values. Okay, this is one way of inserting, directly providing the values. Again, I will just copy the values. Insert into employee, and these are the values that I would like to insert. So I'm providing the first name as Raja, middle name Ram, last name Roy, okay, age 32, salary 35,000, and location is Hyderabad. And everything is perfectly fine. Wherever we need to use a string varchar, it is supposed to be enclosed in quotations. That is how it knows, the system knows that we are using string data. Numbers, you directly provide the number. And when I run this statement, if I execute this statement, it will run perfectly fine and data gets inserted into the table. Now, to confirm that it got inserted, we can just query it using the DQL command. And you can now see that it has returned one record that was inserted. Single insert. Let me do one more thing now. We'll talk about a few concepts here. I am going to run the same command, but this time, let's say the person for whom I'm trying to insert the data doesn't have a middle name. Okay, it's not necessary that people should have middle name. It's possible that they may not have middle name. Okay, let's say this person's name is Mohan, who's 30 years old and making 25,000 salary and belongs to Hyderabad, or let's say belongs to Chennai, some location. If I run this command, what will happen? Let's check. This person doesn't have middle name, and therefore I did not enter the middle name because it doesn't exist. I completely skipped that field. I skipped the entry into that field. And if I run this command, it's going to throw an error because the system doesn't know that we have skipped the middle name, right? It found Mohan, which it will take as first name. It found Roy, which it is going to take as middle name. And then the number of columns that we have entered here, the data into the columns is not consistent with the number of columns that the database has, that the table contains. So it's throwing an error. There is a problem with the way we have tried to enter the data. This structure, the number of columns here, and this structure and the number of columns here do not match. Hence the problem. So if we do not have data for certain columns and we need to enter the data without an entry, skipping the entry into a certain column, how do we do it? In such cases, we need to provide the structure of the table over here. Okay, we can't skip it. We need to provide the structure. So instead of this command, which failed, I'll have to enter this command. So what will this do? It will insert into employee, and I'm very clearly specifying the list of fields for which I'm going to provide the data. I'm going to provide data for first name, last name, age, salary, and location. And now the values. What are the values? Mohan. So what will it do? It will map this name with the column list that we have given here. That is first name. Roy will go into the last name. Okay, because we didn't put middle name here. 28 will be taken as the age. 35K will be taken as the salary. Hyderabad will be taken as the location. So the column count here and the column count under values are the same. And the type of the data is also same. If wherever we have string, we are enclosing it in quotes. Wherever it is integer, we are giving the numbers. Again, location is a varchar, so it has been enclosed in quotations, as you can see over here. Okay, so because there is no mismatch, because everything seems to be perfectly fine here, it is going to allow me to enter this record for Mohan Roy into the table. When I run it, let me show you the output. You see, query returned successfully. Okay, and if I query the data in that table and show you, you will now be able to see two rows. And look at the second row. There is no entry that we gave for the middle name, right? So it is taking null. Null means data does not exist. It is not a space. It is just null, meaning data does not exist. We did not make an entry into that field. That person doesn't have a middle name. Okay. Now, let me enter another record here where I will change the first name to null. Or let me not do that and confuse you all. Let me say, I'll not even give first name this time. I'm not giving first name. Okay. I'm inserting data into the employee table. And the fields for which I'm providing information is just the last name, age, salary, and location. Is this valid? Say this person is from Chennai. Is this valid? Let me run it and see whether it will throw an error or whether it will allow the entry. It didn't throw any error. It worked perfectly fine. It's saying query returned successfully. It managed to insert the row. This is strange, isn't it? If I do a select star, you can see the result of that query which I ran. It is allowing null in the first name also. It is allowing null in the middle name. Last name I have given. If I had not given, it still would have worked. Okay, when you're trying, if you just remove last name and insert only age, salary, and location, it will still work. Now, why is it working? How can the first name of a person be null? How can a person not have a name? Right? This is not correct. We should not allow such entries into the table. But we are allowing it. Why did this happen? Why did this get permitted? Is because we did not put any constraint. We did not put any restriction saying you are not supposed to enter a null value here. You are expected to make an entry. You are expected to give data for this field. So we didn't impose any such restrictions. So now I'm going to impose the not null constraint and then see whether this will work or not. So what I will do is drop the table employee. I'm going to completely drop the table. So when you drop the table, what happens is the entire table will be removed. Okay, the entire table along with the data and the structure, everything will be gone. So let me run this command. And now if I do a select star and try to query the data from here, it will not return anything. It says the relation employee does not exist. Relation meaning the table. Okay, employee does not exist. It's saying it doesn't exist. Where did it go? We dropped it. So using drop, what did we achieve? We deleted the definition of the table itself. In one go, the table, its structure, its data, everything is gone. So drop also comes under DDL command. Why? It has changed the definition. It has completely deleted the definition. So it is a DDL command. One of the DDL commands is create, which creates the table by defining it. Another DDL command is drop, which completely removes the structure of the table. I will recreate it, but while creating this table now, I'm going to impose the not null constraint. Not null. This is also a middle name can be null. Okay, we'll not put any constraint there. It's quite possible that sometimes people will not have middle name. So first name and last name are not supposed to be null. We will not accept if it is null. Okay. Age of the person. Person would definitely have an age. So not null. Salary. When we are recruiting a person as an employee into an organization, obviously that person will be given some salary. So this also cannot be null. So not null. And the person would belong to some location. So I will put not null over here as well. So what is the thing that I'm changing about the definition of this table? I have imposed a not null constraint on those columns where it is mandatory to provide the data. We should not skip. We cannot say that will not make an entry in the first name. We cannot say will not make an entry in the age column. We have put the not null constraint. And I'm going to run this query now. The table will get created again. Now let's try to insert this record into the table. Will it work? Okay, let's just insert this record into the table first, our initial record for Raja Ram Roy. It will work because here, though we are giving the values directly, all the columns are present. So this will run perfectly fine. And if I run this command, this will throw an error. Why will this throw an error? Because here I did not provide the middle name. I did not provide the middle name. But middle name can be null. We did not put any not null constraint on it, right? It can be null. Then why is it not allowing? Because you have to explicitly put null there. Okay, when you type in null, it understands that the customer does not have middle name, that the employee doesn't have middle name, and it will work. You see this? It worked. If you would like to skip certain columns, then you can do so by giving the column list. Give the column list. Here, I haven't specified middle name at all. So when you do not specify the name of the column in the column list, even if you skip it over here, it will not throw an error. Let's see. Mohan Bajpai is the name of the employee for whom I would like to make an entry. Okay, so will this work? It will work because I have explicitly given the column list and the values here match with the column list, even with the type of the data and the number of columns. So this worked. In the previous case, because I wanted to skip middle name, but I did not give the column list, I had to explicitly put null. Now, what will happen if I skip first name? I'm not providing in the column list, and I will not mention it over here. I'm not entering the first name at all. Then will this work? It should not work. In the previous case, it worked, but now it should not work. Why? Because of the not null constraint. Look at that. Null value in column first name of the relation employee, which violates not null constraint. It's not possible. The failing row contains null, Bajpai, 2835K and Chennai. So this is not possible. You can't have null here. Okay, fine. Let me just put in first name. And how about typing in null here? Same thing. It will not allow. Just because I have given the name of the column in the column list, if I put an entry manually, if I put null, this is equivalent to again entering null data. So again, I'm still violating the not null constraint. So here it expects that we will give some name. Okay, I just gave some name and I'm going to run this query now. It worked successfully. So that is the purpose of the not null constraint, to make sure that the field, the data in that field is not left blank, to force people to make an entry into the column. You have to impose the not null constraint if required on those columns where you feel it is meaningful. Like middle name, it could be null, so we will not put such constraint there. Rest of the places we have put a constraint. Now let's say this organization which has recruited employees or which is in the process of recruiting employees, okay, and making entry of the employees for the employees into the employee table. Let's say it is based out of Hyderabad. Okay, so most of the people who will be joining here will belong to that location. And when we do not provide an entry in the location column, when we don't provide any location explicitly, it should take the default location as Hyderabad. Because most of the employees will be from there, every time to keep on entering the name of the location might be a redundant task. So how about just making it the default value, and whenever nothing is entered in the location column, it should pick up the default. So for that, we can use something called as default. Here, please notice that I'm deleting the not null constraint. And before I do that, let me drop the table because I want to continue with the same name. I drop the table. Now I'm going to create the table again with a default as Hyderabad, which means what? The default location will be Hyderabad. For those employees for whom we do not specify the location explicitly, it is supposed to take Hyderabad. So I'm going to create the table with this new definition. What is the new definition? Same number of columns, same data type, not null constraints wherever applicable, but on the location field, I'm giving a default value. It ran successfully, but there will be no data because I had deleted everything and created it, right? So the structure is there, okay, but there is no data. Now, I'll try to insert values. So I'm going back here. And while inserting the values, let's say I will not mention location. Under the list, under the column list, I'm taking only those values which are mandatory, which is first name, last name, age, and salary. And I'm skipping location here. So let's say location is not required. We're not going to provide the location. Let's give some names. Some name. Okay, one single insert. Let's say she's 25 years old. Now, when I make an entry for this employee into the table, okay, when I run this query and make an entry for this employee. Now, on PostgreSQL, I would like to tell you one thing explicitly. You need to select the command before you run it. You need to select the command, and only after you have selected the command, you have to go up to the execute button and click on it, or press the function key F5 in order to execute the command. Because if you do not select the command, it will try to run the first command in the query. Okay, in the query editor, it will try to run the first command in the query editor, which is again not correct. Okay. All right. So this command got executed successfully. And when I try to go ahead and query the table, you see, I'm selecting this one. It's going to show me the record for that customer. Priya is there. We have data for Priya. So I did not mention middle name here. Middle name is null. I did not mention location. I did not mention location. Even then, it took the location as Hyderabad. Why so? Because while defining the table, we said that the default location is Hyderabad. What if you have to enter the data for an employee from a different location? Then you need to explicitly give the location. So let's say Mohan Roy with null middle name is from Chennai. In this case, I will have to explicitly mention the location. Okay, if you do not mention the location, it is going to take the default. If you mention the location, it will give precedence to that value and enter that value, allow you to enter that value there. Now, can I enter null for location? Okay, how about I give location in the column list, which means it will expect some entry here. Because I have explicitly specified location in the list of columns, it would expect an entry here. Okay, so I'm going to just leave it as null. Will it take the default Hyderabad, or will it take null, or will it throw an error? Let's check. Let's change the name to something else. Let's say Pooja Sharma. Okay, and I'm going to run this query. Let's see. It didn't throw an error. It worked perfectly fine. Let's check the data. Look at that now. It has made an entry for Pooja Sharma and it has accepted null in the location column. Now, why did this happen? We gave a default location, right? Why did that not supersede? It wouldn't, because I did not give not null constraint over here. I did not give the not null constraint over here. So I'll just go ahead and drop the table again. and create it new. This time, I'm going to include not null. So I'm telling you, take the default location as Hyderabad, but make sure that people don't explicitly enter null value. Okay. If they explicitly enter the null value, you throw an error. It will not, now it will not allow null. So if I go and try to make this entry where I'm giving location as null, it's going to throw an error because we are violating the not null constraint. So if we have mentioned location in the list, it expects us to give the location. Even if it is Hyderabad, you need to give it. Okay, you need, if you have mentioned location in the list, you're expected to give the location. Let's say this person is from Bangalore. Or, okay. Now it will allow. Okay, this person is from Chennai. It will allow. This person is from Hyderabad. Here, why am I mentioning Hyderabad explicitly? Because I did not provide the column list. I hope you are able to, trace back. See, when you do not give the column list, when you do not give the column list at all, Tableau will expect you to make an entry in each and every column in that table. First name, middle name, last name, and everything. If null values are allowed, you can give null. So instead of Raja Ram Roy, because null is allowed here, I could just give null. It will work. Okay. But if you do not mention the column list explicitly, you need to provide an entry to each and every value, entry into each and every field. Otherwise, it will throw an error. If there are certain columns where you would like to use the default values or you would like to just leave them blank, then you mention the column list explicitly. Okay, so mention the column list explicitly because it is going to match the number of columns under values with the number of columns given in the column list. Okay, so let's say for some other customer, I'm entering some data and I will skip the location part. You can see that in the column list, I have not given location. So I'm okay. It's okay to skip it here because we have given the default. We have given the default. It will take Hyderabad as the default location for this person. So based on what I have inserted, I'm going to query the table. Look at this. These are the records that I inserted into the table. Pooja Sharma from Bangalore, I inserted for I made an entry for a person from Chennai. And wherever I did not give an entry, it took Hyderabad. So this is how we make inserts into the table by using some constraint. We saw not null constraint and we saw the default value, default with the not null constraint. Default and also the not null. Because if you give default and forget to mention not null, if people explicitly want to enter null there, it will allow. So if you want to make sure that always the default value is taken and people are not supposed to leave it blank, we need to give not null constraint also. Even after specifying default, we should give not null constraint also. Now, all the while, I've been inserting only one row at a time into the table. Okay, I think it got stopped.